Hi, everyone, and welcome to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. This is Gianni DePoce, your host, and I'm joined this week by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Ray Merriman. Ray, how you doing? Thanks for joining me today.
I'm doing great, Johnny. It's good to be with you again.
Indeed. So we are coming up to the most intense geocosmic period of the year. We had a very intense week of geocosmic activity this past week, but as we look forward into the week ahead, Mercury going direct, Jupiter going into Taurus, squaring Pluto, Mars going into Leo, opposing Pluto as well. So a lot going on in the markets, and they're behaving in a very choppy manner. So what's your take on the geocosmic situation before we start looking at some charts here?
I think it is one of the most chaotic periods that we're going to go through. And it started last week with Sun conjunct Uranus. It even started before that. It started with Mercury retrograde April 21st. And then the midpoint, May 2nd and 3rd, these are all critical points. I mean, markets made highs and lows in different markets at each of these markers. And then last week, like I said, we had the Sun conjunct Uranus, which in typical fashion was a breakout for some markets, but also in typical fashion, the trickster, Mercury retrograde, turned into be a fake out for many of them. Many of them made their highs around May 9th. And then they sold off really sharply into the end of the week, as we'll see when we look at some of these markets. So going into next week, I don't expect the intensity to minimize at all. I think it's going to continue being there for the next week, maybe even early the week after this. We're in a critical crunch period that is defined by these aspects and these signs: Mars, Jupiter, Pluto in a T-square, which is a period of chaos. It's a period of exaggeration, hysteria, financial crisis, and a feeling of panic as we head into the debt ceiling limit crisis that doesn't seem like it's going to get resolved. But I think as Jupiter moves towards sextile to Saturn in mid-June, it does get resolved.
All right. Well, that's a great introduction to the charts that we're about to pull up here. So let's start off by looking at the Dow. You dropped a little bit of a teaser on your Twitter account yesterday, Ray, about some notable price action activity between the Dow and the NASDAQ. So what's your take on what's going on in the two big equity indices in the U.S.?
Well, we got to make a decision here. Is this going to be a low, which the Dow looks like it's ready to plunge into next week, which is the midpoint of this May 9th to the 23rd period is next week. So it looks like it's ready to plunge into that, what we call maybe a half primary bottom. Yeah, you're showing there's some pretty good support. That's where we may be headed if it continues down, which I think is a real possibility. I don't think this chart looks nearly as good as the NASDAQ, because here you've got a market that's sloping down. The NASDAQ, if you look at the NASDAQ, it made a new cycle high. It made a new its highest level since last August on Friday. But if you look at your oscillators on the bottom there, yeah, you've got you're getting an indication there of a bearish oscillator divergence. So I think the key is the NASDAQ. I think the NASDAQ is showing the real critical reversal data of the geocosmics. I think it's high. It's showing the market's making a high. I think it's going to turn. I think it's going to lead the stock market down too. But this could all be over in 1 or 2 weeks.
Well, you know what's interesting, Ray, is that the NASDAQ has not taken out its high from August of last year, while the Dow Jones has.
That's correct. Same with the S&P. It hasn't taken out the high either. And the Dow hasn't even taken out its high of December. It took out its high of last August, but it hasn't taken out its high of December, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and look at some Asian markets. I know you wanted to look at the Shanghai Composite, so let's begin with that, and then we'll look at the Japanese Nikkei next.
I think this is a perfect illustration of the Sun conjunct Uranus. Okay, you made a new high exactly on May 9th. Yeah. And as we've been saying in our Shanghai Composite monthly report, we're looking for this to retest a high of, what was it, February of 2022, I think it was. So it got within 5 points of it. So we're getting that retest of that high, and that confirms that that 33-month cycle low was that low you had back there in October, November.
Yeah.
So that was the 33-month cycle high. We expected we'd go back up and at least test that high in February. We've done that. I think we can go higher too. Once this 1 to 2 week sharp decline that I foresee happens in many of these markets, I think you got another rally coming up there in the Shanghai. I don't know if it's going to take out that triple top in the 3,700 areas.
Yeah,
I am doubtful about that, but we've met our objective. Our minimum objective was to retest that 3420 area, and we did that last week.
you're talking about this high right here, right? Right.
Yes.
Yeah. This is from July 2020.
Yeah, the low actually before then would have been the 33-month cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think. Yeah, right there. Yeah.
April.
And then you had the double bottom, and now you're getting a double top. But I think it's a good chance to take out that double top after a good correction here.
All right, very good. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Japanese Nikkei because such a amazing case of what a bubble can do to a market, because the Japanese Nikkei still hasn't recovered from its peak in 1988 or 1989.
Right.
But, it has been holding up pretty well and hasn't really declined to the same degree that U.S. stocks have. So it closed up on the week. Let's see, pretty much near the highs because we're looking at the weekly chart here. Let me go ahead and zoom back in on the daily chart. So pretty strong finish to the week in the Japanese Nikkei. This kind of looks like a breakout to me, Ray. What do you think?
Yeah, looks like a breakout to me too, except we're under Mercury retrograde, which means it's probably a fake out.
Yeah.
And if you look at the primary bottom there, which goes back to, that primary bottom, this is, that was week number 18 last week. You very seldom see a primary cycle top happen after the 18th week.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is really, really a long primary cycle. And the week before you had a gap up. Okay. That's a late, you see that gap the week before? Yeah, right there, that gap, that was a weekly gap. A weekly gap that late in the primary cycle usually turns out to be an exhaustion gap. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it's a measuring gap, then this is going to take out the highs of 2021. It's going to go above 30,795. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to do that right away. I think that's an exhaustion gap. I think we're going to go down and fill it in the next couple of weeks. And everybody, I'm sure, is bullish on it because it made a new yearly high here on Friday.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it took out the high of August. Made a new yearly high.
It did, yeah. Highest level since January 2022, actually.
Yep. So everybody's going to be bullish on it. I think it's a setup. I think it's a Mercury retrograde setup coming into this aspect of panic and hysteria, which is already started with the debt crisis going on in the United States. I think it's going to spread to the other markets, and I think the next 2 weeks are going to be. I think you're going to get probably a stronger. My sense is you're going to get a stronger sell-off than most people expect. Although I'm not going to say I'm 100% on that because you're still following that Sun conjunct Uranus, which is breakout. But Mercury retrograde is fake out, but you still got breakout going on too. So I suppose you could get another few hundred points out of this. But I think if I'm a trader, I'm looking to sell this rally in the Nikkei and the any market that's making a high at this point.
Well, I think what you just explained, Ray, is a great segue. I want to look at the euro here because we haven't updated the Friday price action yet, but another strong down day here on Friday, euro going out near the lows of the week. And, this ties into the whole debt ceiling showdown. I think it could lead to a flight to safety trade. As counterintuitive as that might be, a flight to safety trade into the US dollar, even though the turmoil is stemming from the federal government. So what's your take on the euro here? Because it looks like a primary cycle crest is complete.
Well, I do think so. I mean, it's a slightly higher high than the one we had a few months ago. Yeah. But, I'm still of the opinion, of the belief that the presidential cycle dominates here. So this is to me, this whole thing is a corrective rally, and I think the dollar is going to gain strength again. And I think the dollar relative to the euro is going to go back to that low we saw. Where was that? Yeah, I think we're going to go back to that area. If you look at the dollar yen, I think that the dollar yen is maybe going to go back and take a look at that high you had last year in the dollar. 150. I think the dollar yen is headed to 140 or higher, and maybe even back to 150. I'm not so sure it's going to take out that high, the 151 area, but I could see it being up around that area again, somewhere within 6 months of the next presidential term, which is January 2025.
Very good. You want to look at gold or crude oil next?
Let's look at crude oil next and hold gold for the end.
Okay, so Then we got to touch on Bitcoin real quick. So
Yes, we
crude
do.
oil out near the lows of the week here. So this is quite the capitulation low if I've ever seen one, Ray. But what's your take on what's going on in the energy market?
If I'm not mistaken, that low was what, May 4th or 5th?
May 4th, yep. Same day
May
as
4th,
Venus square
okay.
Neptune.
What was it?
Same day as Venus square Neptune.
And also the midpoint of Mercury retrograde, one day after Mercury retrograde. So a market that didn't make a reversal at the beginning of the Mercury retrograde oftentimes reverses at the middle. There's a good case of it, plus you had the Venus Neptune to support it. So, but we're coming in the big aspect next week, which involves Jupiter. I mean, Mars is going to square Jupiter, and they're both going to T-square Pluto. This could be, is this going to be in the 4 to 9 day Lindale wiggle period? I don't know, but I think this is a retest, a 1 to 2 week retest. I don't think it's going to make a new low. I think it's a buying opportunity if it just goes down into what was it, around 67s? I think that low was 62. Yeah, but around that area, that's a nice area to shoot for, right where you got that line. Yeah. I'd be looking to buy in that area in the next week under this Mars Jupiter Pluto T-square.
Excellent. Let's look at Bitcoin real quick because it's breaking down a little bit here on Friday, and then we can wrap up with gold. So, I think the big question is, Ray, is whether the primary cycle crest is already complete in Bitcoin, or whether we're falling into that second major cycle low. Now, if we start making it low beyond this week and into next week, I think we've pretty much confirmed the primary cycle crest is complete. But if we can find a little bit of a floor here, we could make one more high, but it is getting very late in the cycle, and I think we need to be on alert for further downside in the short term. So anything else you want to add to that?
Well, first I want to give you kudos, because in our last couple classes, you prepared our students for this down move. I was a little more bullish than you, and you were a little more bearish than me, and you proved to be right. I do think that this has got a bottom. I mean, it's going down into this aspect. I tend to think of this as a second major cycle. Yeah. I know. Well, the students will understand that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over that with the general public, because I'm going to confuse them. But I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see support in 25,000, 26,000 area. You're already getting in that area. If you start breaking below 24,000, then I would think that's a primary cycle top. Otherwise, I think you're going down to the second major cycle low this week or next week, and I'm looking for that 25, 26,000 area to hit.
All right, very good. Let's wrap up with gold here. Let's see, is the spot price updated? It is. So gold, we had that spike high last week, right around the Mercury retrograde midpoint. We've come down from that high, but we did stabilize a little bit on the decline this Friday. So what's going on in the metal market, Ray?
I think the metals, and especially silver, is a really good example of what's going on astrologically. And I think it's kind of what we may have expected with all the markets had it not been just Mercury retrograde. But you see good support here, 1980, 2000. Okay, it could break it. And if it does, then you got another support there around 1935, 1955 area, somewhere in that area. If you get down to either of those areas and start building another support in the next week, May 16th, give or take 1 week, I think gold's a buy. I really think gold has turned into a bull market. I think it went up and tested its all-time high. There's resistance there. It's falling back. But as long as it stays above 1900, I think any decline here is a good buy, especially around that 1950, 1960, if you get a chance this week. Maybe even 1980, 2000. But let's look at silver, because I think that's a little bit more revealing of what's going on in the cosmos.
Know that. Yeah.
Look at that. I mean, our idea was that markets would make a low there, late April or so, run up into early May, make a lower low into this period. And this is exactly what you're seeing in silver. You got that low in that first low about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Then you got the new yearly high here, which is May 5th, I think.
Yep, May 5th, yep.
Okay, so and gold made a high May 4th, so gold was in the Mercury retrograde zone. This was 1 day later. And now look at your CCI down there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a classic sell, isn't it? When you had the high, you had lower high, but look at now you're getting it. Well, my CCI shows minus 200. Oh, you're showing an RSI.
I have ours. I can pull up CCI real quick.
Let's do. I think that's a really telling indicator of what's going on technically in silver.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is. You went over plus 200 at the high. One day later, you had the high, and now you're minus 200. Okay. And I think this means you've got a low coming in within 7 trading days here. And I think that's going to be a half primary cycle low. And then we'll see if the next rally can make a new high. I wouldn't be surprised if we see silver at $30 or higher if it makes this bottom in the next, let's say, next 7 trading days. So I think this is a perfect example of what's going on from the cosmic point of view.
Yeah.
And we're going into this big hysteria period, this big panic period. Silver, gold stocks are all selling off. Bitcoin selling off. I think it's a perfect setup for those who are attentive and sophisticated at trading. Just, it's risky. There's danger here, but that's where the greatest opportunities for profit exist too. And I think we're in that zone here.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the messaging becomes a little bit more clear after this weekend.
No. Yeah, very, very much hopeful, but I don't know if we're going to get a lot of hope yet from the government on this debt ceiling, because that's what's overshadowing all this anxiety, I think, in the financials right now. But I do think by the time Jupiter sextiles Saturn, which is mid-June, sometime before then, late May to mid-June, I think they're going to rectify this.
All right, very good. Well, Ray, we covered a lot of ground today, so thanks again for joining me. I do have a couple of brief announcements for viewers. We're going to be publishing the May edition of the monthly cycles report. That's our flagship publication. Ben, it's been written for what, 41 years, Ray? 42 years?
Let's see, we started in 1981 or 82. Yeah, 41 or 42 years.
Yeah, 41, 42 years. So stocks, bonds, interest rates, currencies, commodities. If you want to see our latest thoughts, I would encourage you to check that out. I will also be doing a webinar lecture with Astrology University, our good friends over at Astrology University, next Saturday, May 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So you can register for that at astrologyuniversity.com. We'll be giving a 6 to 12 months update forecast on various financial markets. And certainly last and not least, Ray, perhaps you want to say a couple words about this. We will be having our Course 2 investment retreat at the beginning of June in Troy, Michigan. It's going to be from June 1st to June 4th. So it's a great opportunity to spend a weekend with us, learn a little bit of MMA methodology, and see our forecast on various markets. So anything you wanted to add to that, Ray, before we wrap it up here today?
Just that is an exceptional opportunity and a wonderful experience when we get together. The courses are good. The educational material, of course, I believe is exceptional. You're not going to get anywhere else. We're going to talk about long-term planetary cycles, correlated to long-term market cycles. We cover many markets for investors. But what happens in between the classes, during the lunch breaks, during the dinner breaks, I mean, it's invaluable. The information that's imparted between the participants and the quality of the atmosphere, it can't be beat. It's really a high level experience for people on a psychological level, on an ability to connect and network with other people. If you can make it, I would highly recommend you make it. It should not be missed if you can be there.
All right, very good. And details can be found at www.mmacycles.com. And if it's something you're interested, you can shoot an email to customer service@mmacycles.com or mmta@mmacycles.com. So that's all for this week. Next week, we're going to have another special guest joining us, a former graduate of the Merriman Market Timing Academy. He will also be attending the investment retreat at the beginning of June. So hope to see you there, and hope to see you next week as well. Same time, same place. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Johnny.